record.
Hey, now it's recording.
Is there an agenda?
There is not an agenda. We're going straight
We're
off the cuff with this.
we are basically just winging it.
Yes, we are wigging it, folks, and welcome back to the Track Packers podcast, a special little midweek edition of the Track Packers. Of course, it's John and I once again, as the Pelkeys are off having some fun on tour, as they like to say. How are you doing this week, John? I'm sure it's been a busy week for you.
Yeah, it's been busy because we had a lot of racing action this weekend around the rain showers that were throughout the state of North Dakota. We had a lot of rain here in various spots throughout the weekend. For the holiday. Holiday was fun. And then I hit the busy time from the work season. So this is our busiest time of the year here within the middle of the summer months. And then we'll pick back up again in October with another busy time. Part of being an accountant, usually you have your four busy times throughout the year with year end and then the quarters. And yep, we're right in the middle of one of our quarter closes here for work. So yes, I am very busy from a work perspective. I got home actually tonight. We're podcasting here a little bit later this evening, but I actually got home from work a little bit after about 9:30 tonight. So yep, so it was a busy night and a busy day at the office.
Yeah, I actually got to go home to mine for a few days, and I actually just got back into town today on Wednesday the 10th. And so I've been kind of working from home a little bit and spending some time with the family and being going on tour as well to various racetracks. And so I'm sort of catching up for like a brief stint before I go back over to Mandan, hopefully tomorrow after work. And so yeah, this is definitely the busy time of the year for sure. Well, of course, we don't really have an agenda on this episode.
We don't.
We figured we'd give a little update on like the race weekend and kind of how the mod tour is going since that's been the main focus for us this week. We will still give a shout out to our sponsors, including Mr. Tyler Hall with Hitch Harness. Hasn't been on tour the last couple of years. When was the last time he was on tour?
Boy, that's a good question, Mason. Probably the year that it was at Red River.
Oh,
The year
yes.
that they started it, probably in 2020, was probably the last year that he was truly I think he only ran the Fargo show actually that year on tour, but that's probably the last time he ran a tour event.
That would make sense because I saw that clip from Red River Valley circulating again today. I think today's the 4-year
I did.
anniversary.
Yes,
Yes.
the one that on the call with Chad and Corey when they were announcing the tour, and that was still one of the best events probably from you know how do I want to put it? Should have had a V8 moment.
Yes, it was definitely interesting. I don't, hopefully that doesn't get replicated again because I know that was, I'm sure a lot of those drivers were kind of shaking their heads after the fact. But
Yes.
but of
Yes.
course, check out Tyler's product, Hitch Harness, made for safe and efficient storage for your receiver hitches in the back of the truck. Hitchharness.com is where you can find all of his products, including chassis dollies and pull bar brackets. If you want to work on some additions to your racing program, make life a little bit easier for you there. And thank you, Tyler, as always, for supporting us on the podcast. And so, as we kind of get into our little recap of the weekend, I guess we'll start with, I guess the 4th of July is kind of where we kind of left off. We were both at a racetrack on the 5th of July over at the McLean County Speedway for the Tony Niffen Memorial. And actually, I was in town at Minot for the 4th of July, but I actually did not go to the racetrack. I actually took a rare race off being at home. And so it's a little bit different, kind of skipping out on a race nearby.
It's got to be unusual for you, Mason, because you usually never skip out on a race throughout the racing season.
No,
So,
when you have friends in town that you only get to see like 2 to 3 times a year, if that, you want to definitely make the most of the time. So kind of having a good balance and not trying to burn yourself out at the same time, too, knowing that you have potentially 5 to 7 race nights in the next 8 to 10 days. And so
Oh yes.
nice little day off. And then of course, my mom and my aunt actually joined me down in McLean County Speedway. So it was a little bit of a family affair. And my mom hasn't been to the track in couple, 2, 3 years. And my aunt, I don't know the last time she's been at the track. I think when my late uncle was racing in the 70s is maybe one of the last times. And so that was definitely a good time. And I know you were there with your mom. Jessup came up as well. So definitely a full crew and the stands were packed. I mean, what did you think kind of walking in?
They they were packed. So we got there actually pretty early though. I don't know what time you pulled into the track. We pulled into the track a little bit after 6. It was about maybe like 6:05, 6:10, right around that area that we pulled in and got a spot pretty high up in the grandstand. So at that time they weren't super full, but boy, they really filled in about the next 30 to 40 minutes. I mean, they were pretty packed by the time they started the race program. For sure. I always get a pit pass usually when I go to tracks, very similar to you, Mason, because then I can kind of venture around and talk to people in the pits and visit with people. And I definitely did a lot of that on Friday. Now, I have to tell you a story about going up to Underwood on Friday though. So we're on the way up there. And again, it's one of those days to where there's hit and miss, showers and thunderstorms. Kind of the case throughout the weekend that we had here. Like Mason said, he was up in Minot on the 4th. They got their show in, beat the weather there too, so that was nice. I was planning to be in Jamestown on the 4th as announcing on Jamestown, and unfortunately they fell to weather on the 4th, so they had weather around them all day, and it finally just rained to the track, and they had to end up canceling. They still had the fireworks show, I think, later in the night, but it did rain majority of the night there as well. But yeah, so we were up on our way to Underwood, and we get to a little bit past Wilton, and it starts to sprinkle a little bit. And I knew we were going to run into a little bit of rain just by looking at the radar, and it rained for a little bit, not too bad. But then we hit Washburn, and by the time we got to Washburn, it had definitely started to pick up. The rain had, you can just kind of tell with the cloud structures and everything else. It had definitely picked up. We hit Washburn and the drops were probably that big when they were hitting the window. And I was like, what the heck? Luckily, no hail. Thank goodness, right? But I'm thinking to myself, I was like, it just downpoured. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, we're only about a good 12 to 13 miles away from the racetrack. I was like, I hope it's not doing this in Underwood right now. But it would be a perfect scenario if it was doing it in Underwood right now because, obviously Mason was going to be at the racetrack, so it would make sense. But but no, it was definitely one of those areas to where luckily the track got missed because we ran out of the rain only about 5 miles south of Underwood by the time we got there. And it didn't look like the track had received anything that day, thank goodness, from that weather system. So yeah, so it was a good night overall. But Mason, they had 110 cars. They had a really good car count and 26 stock cars for the Niffen Memorial Race, which was pretty impressive as well with some big names.
Yeah, with it being basically, well, scheduled to be the night before the Dakota Classic Modified Tour with the stock cars was going to take place over in Jamestown. Of course, we'll kind of get to that in a minute or two. But yeah, definitely some travelers. I know, I feel like you kind of utilized the pit pass to go and talk to some of those out of state drivers. I heard you got a shirt or two beforehand.
Oh yes, I went down to the pits and I was talking to people. So contrary to most of Becca's beliefs over the years. So I do talk to quite a few people in the pit area. So and do get recognized by quite a few people in the pit area. Back in the day, Becca was always like, nobody even knows who you are. So that is a complete false statement. So yeah, so was going through and was talking to quite a few of the drivers and other people that I know from just various racetracks, various events. It's kind of funny, Mason, you're gonna, kind of go into this too, but um a lot of the drivers, we race in the summertime a lot of times, and then we have additional activities that we do in the wintertime when it's cold out, right? Some of them do snowmobiling, some of them will go through and do ice racing, some of them will do maybe in the summertime they might do a horseshoe league even, or they bowl. A lot of them are bowlers in the wintertime too. So yeah, so I ran into a ton of people that I knew in the pits that were also not even just from the racing scene, but also from the bowling scene and other scenes that we're all part of. So yeah, so no, that part is pretty entertaining too to see the different varieties of fans that show up, especially when you have a race night. For Underwood, it was a big night for them. They sold out of the food in the concession stands basically right after intermission, which was kind of cool to see.
Yep, I
And
fell victim to that.
and I had eaten beforehand, so thank goodness I had something to eat before that. Plus, so with the announcer side of it and me, I usually always kind of carry a couple of snacks with me just to, just to be safe throughout a race night too. But but the other thing too that I had to mention on this was it was kind of a little bit of a treat because Nick was getting ready for the tour with IMCA TV and everything. Darn TV was there, they were broadcasting, but you had Isaac Sondrol on the mic. Isaac's been doing a really nice job over at Underwood this year on the mic while he's not when he's not racing with his IMCA modified. And then we had Lindsay. Lindsay Lawson was on the mic. It was nice to see Lindsay back on the mic and hear Lindsay back on the mic on Friday night too. So yeah, so that part was pretty fun. But
Yeah, and
and
like I
racing
remember,
action wise, oh good.
I was gonna say like when we kind of came in, I think we came in about the same time as you, possibly pretty dang close. And we usually get there pretty early as well. And like there are already trailers parked close towards like the entrance off the road. And my mom was like, she was driving there, and we were like, we don't recall the trailers being that far out towards the roadway. And she's like, well, we're gonna see what be fun. This is gonna be fun trying to find a place to park. And so what that kind of gives you a sense of how many trailers and cars and fans were already on the premises. I did barely made it past the pit meeting where I had 3 or 4 people asking me if I brought my drone with so they could get some pictures of the pits. And I was like, yep, the drone's about to go up in the air very, very shortly. So I was able to get some good pictures of the track and of the pit area because like that's a big deal for a small town track like McLean County Speedway in Underwood to get like a good sense of like how many people were actually there for that big event. And so definitely a good experience to partake in on Friday night. And like you were alluding to, there was no shortage of racing action.
No, it was a lot of racing action. I mean, 110 cars, packed grandstands. There was just a ton of people there, and a lot of action on the track. So the big show of the night was the IMCA stock cars because they were racing for $2,500 to win as part of the Niffen Memorial Race. And a lot of travelers from the East came in. You had a couple of tour guys that came up already as well. You had the guys that typically run the race from Williston, Minot area that will come down and support that great event as well for the Niffen Memorial. But Mason, let's start with the other classes before and we'll finish with the stock cars. So let's go through the first class of the night,
Which would be the
which
Western Renegade Sprints.
exactly. So the sprints, and what a finish in the sprints.
Yeah,
There was some contact.
there was some contact, and being the fans that were around me, they were kind of communicating with us throughout the night. It's like we all could kind of see this coming. So basically, when you have guys like Eric Guyot and Ken Roan's a very accomplished racer out of the Grand Rapids, Minnesota area, and so he was over for the weekend for a few races before he was going to head back over to Minnesota. And he was leading the majority of that race. And I believe it was Jeremy Lisakowski in the 96, that was also a very accomplished racer in North Dakota,
Yes.
was tracking him down towards the end. You could kind of see the way, like the lanes were kind of shifting from top to bottom, what
Mhm.
route was preferred. And so Jeremy was tracking him down, and it kind of came to the white, and it's like, okay, he's close enough where he could throw a slider. But with like weightless sprints, it's hard to throw a slider because if you make contact, it's not going to end up well. And so they got to 3 and 4. Jeremy tries to throw a slider on Ken. It wasn't intentional by any means, but they made contact and it ended up with both of them spinning, and then Lizakowski ended up rolling over, and he was okay, thankfully. And so, being that they took the white flag, they credited the win to Ken Roan in the 46H, and Jeremy Lizakowski was charged with the caution. But I'm sure you, as a fan, probably saw kind of that scenario playing it out.
Oh, absolutely. You could see it was going to be a slider coming, and it's like, I don't think that's going to be a clear slider, and it was not.
No,
As
no,
much as they tried to stay off of each other, it didn't work.
no, and it doesn't
So,
take much contact with those cars to kind of get them spun sideways and flipped over. And thankfully, it like with it being like in the middle of the corner, they weren't carrying a ton of speed, so it was a pretty soft rollover speaking wise. And so, Jeremy was okay. Car, not too great.
I don't
Ken's
think it was great, but it wasn't terrible.
Yeah, Ken's car didn't look too bad. I know he was planning to go over to Alexandria to race with the high roller wingless sprints, and I don't think he made it over there in time. Well, they rained out.
They rained out. Yeah.
So
Yep.
either way, he didn't. I don't think he raced the next day. But congratulations to Ken Roan in the 46 for getting the win. Miles Tomlinson, the Godfather, was second, and Eric Guyot in the 25 from Manitoba was third. So that is just a great way to kick off racing action for the night.
Yeah, that was a very entertaining race to say the least. When we were watching that, I was like, okay, this is going to be a very interesting night overall if it continues to be very much like that.
Yeah, and then we move on to the hobby stocks. And what did you think of the hobby stocks? That was a really good race too.
Yeah, that was a really good race up front between Brenner Grinstead. You had Caden Appelt right there, and Caden finally got around Brenner. It took a little bit of time, but finally got around him. There was definitely some contact made in that feature event as well, and Caden ended up picking up the win. But yeah, great run. Brenner's looked really good towards the mid to a little bit later of the summer months here as we get into the fall racing season area, and he's looked really good so far as we're kind of hitting that that heat of the summer before we hit kind of some of those end of the year shows starting in August here. So yeah, no, he's definitely picked up speed at several tracks and has one of the best looking cars out there in my opinion. So yeah, but no, he got second. Kyler Satrin was right there, and but it was Caden Appel that ended up in victory lane.
Yeah, they did. There was a lot of sliders and crossovers in that race. It almost gave me flashbacks to that mod race with Tom Berry and Jason Wall at Underwood.
Oh yes, yep. When they were throwing sliders back and forth at each other, and there was some contact made during that feature event as well.
Yep. But I mean, contact's inevitable in racing, but especially when you can like race hard and put on a good show for the fans. And I think they were both in pretty good spirits at the end of that too. It was a really good race.
Yep. So stock cars were next because they moved them up because of impending weather. However, we're going to wait on that.
Yeah, well, and that threw me off because I had a GoPro in a car, and that threw me off because I didn't realize they were moving them up.
Yeah, so they moved stock cars up to the third race. They were supposed to be the sixth race and last race of the night. But the class after the stock cars, Mason, was the sport compacts.
Yeah, the Sport Compact is also an interesting race because there was a lot of attrition, but it wasn't really from like contact by any means. It was just,
No, it was like just pulling off.
yeah, it's
And all of a sudden, like the cars would restart after a caution, right? And then they just wouldn't go. So they would pull into the infield. Yeah, it was weird. It was really weird on that.
well, and like Benjamin Burke, who won the track title up at Nodak Speedway, he had gotten out to lead after he passed Chris Yost and Alex Thompson, and he looked like he was on cruise control. And all of a sudden, I don't remember if he had a flat tire or something, but he slowed as the leader and it's just like, all right, well, that opens up the door for everyone else. And then one by one, just cars start peeling off, and it's just like the track's not rough at all.
No, no, because Zach Eubanks was the same way. He got up there and all of a sudden he pulled into the infield, and I was like, "What is going on here?" It's just weird. So, but yeah, but Chris Yost ended up winning that feature event over there on Friday night and held off Alex Thompson, who got second.
Yep, and good run
And
for
another great field of cars, Mason, on that one too. They had mid-teens for car count, so the sport compact classes, it's definitely growing here this year, which is nice to see.
it is. It's a great foundation for like as they get like more experience underneath their belt and start to gravitate in the other classes like hobby stocks, sport mods. There's always been a few that have kind of jumped up into those classes, and so just kind of building that foundation, helping out the entire racing landscape as well. So then after that, I believe was the NX Legends, and they had a pile
Yes.
of legends there too.
Yeah, they had 34 legends on I think it was 34 actually, if I'm not mistaken, on Friday night. So that was a great field of legends. Legends have been, one of the largest car counts across the state. One thing I've noticed this year though with legends, maybe more than even previous years, is that, Dakota Speedway would have like 35 to maybe 40 on a given night, right? Somewhere within that range, maybe 30 to 35. And then it would kind of dip down in the middle of the summer months because a lot of guys would take, and ladies take vacation or they will take a couple weeks off if it gets warm, and enjoy summer a little bit with family and do some other things. But this year what I've noticed is that the legend car count has stayed pretty strong throughout the state, especially at various tracks. So when you look at the car counts, so Minot had them on the 4th. They had, I believe it was 16 in Minot on the 4th of July
Yep.
total wise. I was like, okay, so that'll be their first race. They're going to run most of the August timeframe over there with the Legends, so I'll be curious to see what the car counts are. But Underwood had 34 on Friday. Southwest Speedway and Dickinson had almost 30 on Saturday. They had 29, I think, overall on Saturday. So you notice the car counts have definitely been pretty big across the board at all the tracks this year, compared to kind of just being, hit or miss here or there for a couple of tracks. So that class has definitely gotten to be pretty big and a lot of competition. So the race was for the lead on definitely on Friday night. because you had some big heavy hitters up there. You had Donovan Weist up there, you had the Madler brothers up there, you had Austin Weist up there, you had your national champion in the, basically um pro division, which was Preston Martin. He was up there as well. And Preston had a little bit of contact and actually he didn't look that great on Friday. I think he had some damage to the rear end of the car from that heat race incident a little bit
Mm.
on that and just didn't have a very strong showing up on Underwood. But the battle up front was definitely between Donovan Weist and the Madler brothers. And it was very, very interesting to watch Noah because Noah actually was better coming out of the turns than Donovan. And Donovan was a little bit better through the turns, but Noah was definitely better out of the turns. And Noah, that's where Noah got him. Noah got him coming right out of the turn. And he kind of had a look over in turn two, a look again in turn four, made the pass finally, and definitely, definitely had the car to beat after that and picked up the feature win over there at McLean on Friday night.
Well, I was thinking like, man, he's out weasting Donovan Weist on the Weist line.
I know, right? He was actually holding it lower than Donovan, and Donovan's one of those drivers known for hugging the guardrail on the bottom or hugging the tires around the bottom of the track, and he kind of was sliding up a little bit. Donovan was each and every turn, and sure enough, here comes Noah. Noah was kind of passed him at his own game a little bit over there on Friday.
Yeah, you don't see that happening often. So big congrats out to Noah Mather for getting the Legends win with Donovan Weiss in second, and Gage Mather, Noah's brother, rounded out the top three in the Legends. And then before we get to stock cars, the Sport Mods capped off the night in Underwood in a pretty solid field. They had 13 cars, and this class is also another interesting one this year because there's a lot of drivers that have really stepped up their game this year across the tracks. Like we have guys from like Saskatchewan and Estevan, Williston that are coming over to all these tracks in Minot, Underwood, and very competitive. Think of Tim Goodwin, Keenan Glosser, Cole Hanshoes looked really good this year. And those are some of the players up in the front of the field, including, hot shoe Robbie Roselli, who you can never count out, especially at Underwood. And so the track by that time, the groove was towards the top, but it's especially in Underwood, it's really fun to watch because that top can get pretty treacherous. And I think at some points on the track, it's kind of tough to see where that cushion is.
Especially in one and two. I think one and two it's even tougher to see than maybe even like three and four. Because sometimes in three and four, I feel like you can slide more up to the top. In one and two, it's like you almost have to be precise on the top, or you're gonna go over the edge on one and two.
Yep. And I
So
think actually Derek Voller out of Dickinson was leading that race and he blew it off the top, not once, I think twice.
yes, and he blew it off the top in three and four. Like he literally just went bye-bye off at the top in three and four. So yeah, it was an entertaining race. But yeah, Keaton Glauser, I mean, he looked really good on Friday
Yeah,
overall.
And Cole Hanshu didn't let him get away without a fight. I mean, Cole was right on and waiting for a mistake, and Keaton did really dang good. Like I think he pushed up a couple times in one and two, but it wasn't enough for Cole to get underneath or can to get him a little bit more pressure. But Keaton capped off the night with a feature win there. Cole Hanshu in second, followed by Roselli, Goodwin, and Ryder Raynard coming down from Saskatchewan for the night was your top five finishers. So very solid field in the sport mods. And we finally get to the 2,500 to win IMCA stock car event for the Tony Niffen Memorial. A lot of promotion went into this event, a lot of advertising. Great to see a full field plus a couple of stock cars to show up, and especially some of the tour folks that decided to come up a day early to partake in it. And so, before we get into the racing, what were your expectations going into this race, John?
Well, it was kind of twofold. It's the night before the tour, so I hate to say this, Mason, but I know you do too, but I kind of always have flashbacks to Nodak that year with the tour race beforehand. I think it's just one of those things, right? I was
Yep.
like, first thing is I was like, just don't wreck or have anybody really blow up. That was my first big thing. I was like, let's make sure that we can keep the cars straight and keep them clean, which that feature took over 40 minutes for 25 laps. It was definitely a long feature. Good news is though there was definitely some beating and banging, but it wasn't terminal, basically from a carter perspective on a lot of those cars. So that part wasn't too bad. It was a lot of maybe solo spins or kind of contact between a couple drivers that they would spin out and sit there and cause a caution. So that was a lot of the cautions that happened for sure on Friday in the stock cars. But yeah, my expectations were when you have tour guys come to town from you had Shelby Williams there from Texas, you had Jay Schmidt there from Iowa, You have the Flurries there from Williston, and then you had some of the guys from the East come over too. You had a very strong field of cars there, and I knew it was going to be a hard-fought battle for that win because the $2,500 to win is one of the biggest specials, if not the biggest special, paying special for stock cars in the state of North Dakota. So on a one-day show. So that is definitely something that I knew there was going to be elbows up racing, and that they were going to try to fight pretty hard, and you were going to have to contend with those tour regulars that come up to take home that money. So it was definitely that was my expectations for the night. I was looking forward to seeing kind of the battle between the locals to the tour guys, and then the other battle that kind of transpired throughout the night, which I thought was very entertaining to watch too, was the battle between the West to the East. And what I mean by that is that you had some of the stock car guys that run over in the Red River Valley area, kind of over there with Fargo and Ada, some of in that area come over and race against the guys that run Williston and Dickinson and Minot and on a normal basis. So kind of see that, we usually don't get to see them on a regular basis run against each other. It's typically over at maybe like the end of the year specials. You'll get to see a lot of them run together.
Yep.
Maybe here or there at the mod tour, you'll get to see some of them run together. But it was kind of nice to see the kind of that little bit of a clash, basically clash of the Titans a little bit over there between several of those drivers on Friday night.
Well, and if you well, even though there were spin outs that happened at the front of the field, but the front of the field was definitely where you wanted to be because you're in front of all the chaos going on.
Yes.
Like every restart, there was slicing and dicing, and of course, you have people spinning out and trying to avoid all that. And so, um, in the end, this would probably be a good time to reveal who or what we are repping, huh, John?
Yeah, this might be a good time to do that. First, we'll talk about the race, and then we'll do the rep.
So, kind of started out between a battle between a couple of the East Side stock cars, Johnny Carter and Randy Klein. You had Shelby Williams also in the mix, and they were kind of duking it out for the first few laps. Kind of tough to, with all the caution, kind of get anything going. Like trying to
Yeah.
see, like, which line would kind of prevail. I think the highest I was starting to be the preferred group for the stock cars. And so basically just kind of making sure he kind of stayed out in front from lap to lap. And Johnny, who started outside pole, pretty much held control for that entire race. But Shelby was pretty much right on his bumper the entire time, waiting for a mistake. And Johnny being basically a rookie in this division, still looking for that first IMCA stock car win. It's just like, how is he going to handle the pressure? How is he going to handle a veteran like Shelby Williams, who's won several big races throughout his career? How is he going to handle that? But ended up being Johnny Carter crossing the finish line first to claim the $2,500 payday. And actually, that is who I am repping. And so is John. So big congrats out to Fairmount, North Dakota's Johnny Carter for that first IMCA stock car win. Definitely was a pumped guy in victory lane.
Yeah, definitely probably Johnny's biggest pain win for sure across the board from any type of racing event that he's probably been involved with from a street stock days and everything from there. Like Mason had mentioned, he's a rookie in the stock cars. He's not a rookie to a full body stock car because he's a national champion in the sort of street stock division. But yeah, he's definitely a rookie to the stock car division for the IMCA stock cars. And yeah, Johnny looked really good up front. He was one of those drivers that kind of got saved at one point from a caution because Shelby made the pass out of turn two because, like Mason said, sometimes it's hard to see that cushion. Johnny jumped it over in turns one and two. Shelby got around him at one point. But the caution came out, they reverted back to the last completed lap. And Johnny actually almost gave it away in three and four on the final lap. He had Shelby right below him, and Shelby drove it in pretty hard, and Johnny slid up and kind of tried to correct it and got really tight and was able to get the run off and got the checkered flag. But no, it's nice to see Johnny doing well in the stock cars too. With all the years that he ran street stocks and everything else from there. But yeah, so like Mason had mentioned though, Johnny picked up the win. Shelby was right there in second. You had the Florries right there. Dalton was right up front towards the end of that race too. Jay Schmidt was right there at the end of that race. Kyle Schlup was in the mix as well. So a lot of big names from various parts of the state, which was kind of nice to see here too for the stock cars.
Yep, a nice little preview of the Dakota Classic Modified Tour, and hats off to the crew at McLean County Speedway for a really, really great show. Obviously, you can't really do much about like a ton of cautions, but obviously, I thought
Yeah,
the track was in real nice shape, real
same.
racy, very entertaining, and to see a packed pits and a packed stands, it's hard to complain about that.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with you. I think it was a great night for them overall, a great racing action and just a lot of fun in Underwood on Friday.
Well, so then that kind of sets the stage for the Dakota Classic Modified Tour, which got off to a little bit of a soggy start, unfortunately.
Yeah, the rain bug that hit Jamestown on Thursday did not go away by any means because Saturday woke up and I had seen that they were getting rain already, and I had been notified around 10 o'clock that yeah, it's time to cancel because there's no way that that it looked like it was letting up, and it didn't let up until after 2 o'clock almost is when it let up in Jamestown. So yep, so they ended up canceling the tour race early. So night one of the tour was canceled. So that transitioned into then night one happening over at the Nodak Speedway on Sunday. They did not reschedule the tour race for Saturday at all just because of logistics and making sure that the tour track still got all of that information. However, since they canceled earlier in the morning, Nodak Speedway was kind enough to schedule a race to allow the tour drivers that were on their way to Minot to get basically almost like a test night, essentially. So we actually made the trip up to Nodak on Sunday, over in Minot to watch that event. And it was very entertaining. The track was in really good shape. It was very interesting to watch because when we pulled into town, obviously the rain bug was all over the place this weekend, right? We pulled into town on Saturday, and it was lightning to the east of us, like right maybe only a couple miles north of us, northeast of us. It was super dark to the west of us. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll see if this even happens today. So we went over to the track. We got there. They started at 7 o'clock. I did not walk into the grandstands until basically like 6:45 is when I walked into the grandstands because I was like, there's no reason to push it to get into the grandstands in case, lightning, canceling, blah, blah. So, but no, they actually did get a little bit of rain throughout the race night. It was a really quick show. We started at 7 o'clock. We got done a little bit after 9. They had 61 total cars in the pits. They had 43 mods check in and they had 18 stock cars check in for the night. Some of the tour guys actually were on their way to the track and got there a little bit later, so they actually rejoined, tail ends of B mains or tail ends of features to run those events. However, it was a great night of racing action. To kick off the night, Mason, you were not at the track. You took a night off on Saturday.
I was not there, so I was doing my part to make sure the weather did not hit the racetrack.
We were all very appreciative of Mason not being there because if he would have been there, it would have been a downpour probably, but it was good. And Kayla was nowhere to be seen, so that was good. Although let's back up here really quick. So speaking of Kayla, she's the hurricane of the North Dakota area. So Kayla actually was and race fans, if you want to, drivers, if you want to say anything to Kayla, feel free to on this. She was actually planning on camping over in Jamestown during the 4th of July weekend. So her plan was to head over to Jamestown and camp all weekend. I think she ended up actually not feeling well, so she actually didn't. I don't think she stayed over there and camped.
No.
However, she was on her way over there, I think, on the 4th of July, when it rained out, when the track actually rained out. And then obviously the 6th happened and rained out again. So with Hurricane Kayla being close to the racetrack and with how the rain was just kind of circling around Jamestown this past weekend, I can definitely see where she had an impact on the racing action that was supposed to occur over in Jamestown here this past weekend. So yeah, so once again, Kayla is in full force, in full effect. But besides that, she was not in Minot, so Minot was fine. So Minot was able to run on Saturday, and they had a good show up there. And then it was Angel Munoz that won the stock car A main event. He kind of held off a charging. Brody Carlser did a really good job in that event and led on the majority of that race, finished in the top five. And he had to hold off kind of the likes of Angel and Austin Brands. We haven't seen him a whole lot on the tour. He ran the tour a couple years back and came back up here this year. Has a very nice looking purple and pink 17
Oh,
machine
that's a
and black 17
gorgeous
machine. It's a very
car.
nice looking car. And Austin started tail end. He did not make his heat race, started tail end of that feature event and was working right towards the front and ended up second. So he had a really nice run up there too in that 17 machine. So, but no, it was Angel Munoz and Austin Brands that were the top two drivers in the stock car division. And in the mods, the mods was a really good feature, kind of a prelude, to the Nodak Speedways hosting the Dakota Classic Modified Tour the next night. And it was the Tom Barry and Ethan Bruxma show. And Ethan rejoining the tour again this year. He was not on the tour last year. He was here the year before. And Ethan looks really good. He looked good in his heat race, and he looked really good in the feature event. Tom Berry Jr. got to the front. However, Ethan did not let him get away and was tracking him down. Ethan was using a different line than Tom. Tom was kind of on the lip. He was running the top side, the cushion of the track. And Ethan was diving low in one and two, and then going high in three and four. So he was trying to track him down. He threw a slider or tried to throw a slider on him in three and four on the final lap. Got close to him, but unfortunately did not make it. And Tom Berry Jr. won that first night over there in Minot, the prelude basically to the tour event that ended up happening on Saturday with the rescheduled show.
Definitely a good indication of what's to come for the first few tour races to start kick things off. And kudos to the Nodak Speedway. I'm sure. Well, obviously they got a lot of messages and calls as soon as Jamestown had to pull the plug. To get that track in good race shape and have a lot of people kind of pull together. I think it was 2,500 and ended up win for the mods, and I can't remember how much it was for the stock cars.
Yeah, I think it was almost $1,000, if not over $1,000 for the stock cars. I don't remember hearing the final number for the stock cars. I know the mods were 2,500. I was not sure what the stock cars got to.
But that's a real good job of getting all sorts of funds together and get a race night in at basically just a snap of the fingers. I mean, that came together quickly. So hats off to the Nodak crew for that. And so
And
then
then Sunday,
they're all set to go to kick off the mod tour, night two, but night one for this edition. And a very solid field in both the IMCA modifieds and the stock cars. I have the car counts up here, but
it
do you
was
remember?
50 modifieds, 50 IMC modifieds showed up on Sunday, and 34 stock cars
Yep.
were in attendance to start the tour. And yeah, it was a very good night overall. The track was in very good shape. There was definitely a lot of side-by-side racing and multiple group action as the night progressed, and it was a very interesting night to see how the track was different from Saturday to Sunday and how much different kind of the players were within the fields, because you had a lot more obviously in the stock cars tour guys that were there. You had 18 the first night that were there for the prelude, and then we added another 16 on top of that. And yeah, so that part was very interesting to see and very entertaining. And then the mods themselves had 43, on the prelude, and they had 50 during the actual event. And had a lot of the travelers come up to that, that weren't there the first night. And no, overall though, great night of racing action. Let's just jump into the stock car A main and Mason. It was a little bit trying right away, kind of like the stock car feature over in McLean.
Yep.
It took about the first, I would say, 5 laps were kind of trying to get in, and then after that, they pretty much went clean and green, and it was a very entertaining race up front, that whole feature event.
Yeah, so a guy that came from the back of the pack on Saturday to second, Austin Brands was running the very, very bottom of the track. Like his car was hooked up. He could really grab the moisture at the bottom of the track. And then behind him was kind of like a gaggle of 6, 7 cars. You had Mike Hagan, Angel Munoz, Zach Madrid, Dan McIntoon just in the mix. And they were kind of like duking it out, going like the very high lip to the very bottom of the track. And so that's one of my favorite races to watch at Nodex Speedway throughout the year, just because, stock cars they get high on the track on some nights, but they don't get as high as they do on Mod Tour night. Like they absolutely like rip the lip, and it's so cool to see. And so, while Austin Brands was kind of checking out on the field, and they were just duking out for second on back, and Dan McIntoon in '92 got clear running the high side. And by that time, I think Austin had gotten out to like a 1.5, 2 second lead.
Yeah,
It would have been interesting to see with the caution what Dan could have done running that high line.
agreed. Yep, agreed. Because he was tracking him in, he was kind of tracking him down because Dan at one point was probably, I would say, Mason, about 12 car lengths maybe back, somewhere
Yep.
in that range, 12 to 15 car lengths. And by the checkered flag, I think he had cut it down to about 8 probably. So he had definitely closed in. I wasn't kind of watching live timing and scoring a whole lot, but he definitely had gotten closer. And then back during that battle for third on back, you had, basically Mad Mike Hagan was right there, and he was battling, got up to that third spot at the checkered flag, and he was kind of doing the same thing as Austin. He was hogging the bottom. So, and was able to rip kind of the bottom of the speedway too, and get himself up there into that mix. And you had Rob Van Mill up there, the defending tour champion, that kind of had bad luck the whole entire night. I felt like up in Minot, and prevailed to get a top 7 finish up there. But yeah, then you had Angel Munoz in the mix. Yeah, there was a lot of really good drivers in the mix up there, and they were all over from bottom to top in that feature event. So yeah, so that was a very entertaining race, and like you said, caution came out, I would have been very, very, very curious to see if McIntyre could have done anything with brands because completely opposite lines. One next to the tires on the bottom and one right on the lip on the high side.
Oh yeah, I think it would have gotten real interesting with a caution. But big congrats out to Austin Brands. I believe Randy Brands is his dad, correct?
I think so. There's a relation there too. I think it's his dad, but I'm not 100% sure.
Because I remember watching him like several years ago on tour, and I don't remember if he won up in Mina, but he'd always be in the top two or three, and so kind of cool to see like the name kind of carrying on through future generations.
Yep.
So big congrats out to Austin Brands getting up the stock cars in front of Mac and Tune and Mike Hagan in the 27X, and then we move out to the modifieds, which they didn't have a caution.
No, they ran clean and green for 30 laps, and it was a big, big, big show up there within Minot because you had Colin Hibden, who drew a number two, started second on the field, won his heat race, really good battle between him and Sean Strand in the heat race,
That was a really good heat.
and Colin won that heat race, so he ended up in the redraw, drew a number two, started second on the field, and Colin was ripping the lip, like big time ripping the lip. The mods were definitely right on the top of the track, making a lot of traction up there, and similar to night one with Tom Barry, Colin had to hold off Ethan Bruxma again. Bruxma was right there the whole time, trying to get around him, and Tom held, on night one, Tom held him off. On night two, for the first night of the tour, up in Minot, you had Colin that held him off even after Ethan tried to throw sliders at him through lap traffic, and yeah, Colin ended up with the feature win, an emotional win for Colin. It was actually 2 years to that day that they buried Casey. So when Casey Arneson passed away 2 years back, his funeral was actually 2 years ago on Sunday. So yeah, so it was just kind of a magical night, a little bit if you think about it for Colin himself, because they were super close. Colin was kind of like the little brother for Casey when he came up and joined kind of the U Motors group up there in the Arneson group for a couple years before Casey had his accident and passed away. And he drew the number two. He had the number two helmet with Deuce on his helmet as well on that one too. And yeah, just kind of stars aligned a little bit for Colin, I think. I think he had an extra passenger maybe with him a little bit on that night to get the feature win. But he was definitely emotional in victory lane in his interview. And probably for me, one of the highlights of the tour so far has been that win. So yeah, so congratulations to Colin on night one over there in Mana.
Yeah, and like even though it was a caution free, you think it's like, well, it's going to be hard to like kind of make up ground, and especially like you have some heavy hitters that started deep in the field. Tim Ward, last year's Tour champion, correct?
Yeah, last year's tour champion, yep.
So he started 15th, got up to sixth. You have Kyle Strickler, 20th to 9th, Drew Christensen,
Yep.
21st to 11th. So I mean, plenty of passing, even with like a caution free race. And when you have like heavy hitters such as like Ethan Broxman and Colin Hibden up at the front, it's like you already have a stacked field to try to get through to get up towards the front. And so you can imagine like the caliber of competition that's throughout the entirety of the field. And I want to give a shout out to Chris Tukshire on the 73T, kind of a local out of Minot, mainly runs there. Once in a while goes over to Williston. He was running the very bottom for a majority of that race and was up towards on the outside of the top five before getting passed
Yep.
by a couple of cars late. But really solid run for Chris Tukshire out of Burlington, the 73T. And so that was night one at Nodak, a nice, good, clean night of racing up there. And then we head north of the border for night number two or night number three on the original schedule to the Estevan Moore Speedway. And once again, the fans come out for that night. It was a great crowd on hand. They had a great solid field of cars once again, 48 modifieds and 29 stock cars. So very good representation in both. Before I get to the results in the stock cars, the cool thing about the Dakota Classic Modified Tour is just see the lineups for the heat races. I'm going to give you like one of the heat races from Estevan, and you just try to pick out a winner from this. Heat number two from Estevan. You have Hank Berry and Ricky Alvarado on the front row, followed by Travis Hagan and Cody Smith, Cody Schulp, Colin Hibden in row three, Tim Ward and Aaron Turbo in row four, and Tom Berry Jr. and Chaz Bach in row five. That is an absolutely insane heat race.
Well, now Mason, let me pick a winner out of there. I'm gonna pick Tim Ward.
I I don't remember who won that heat race, to be honest with you. I think it was all
It was Tim Ward. That's why I picked Tim Ward.
okay. I when I saw that lineup, I'm like, oh my goodness.
And I think fantasy related, I think I had five of the matchups in that heat race.
Same. And it's just like, okay, well, that so like because it's on based on passing points for like lineups for like B mains and trying to get like locked into like the A main right away. There's gonna be some heavy hitters just based off that heat race lineup. They're gonna have to come through a B main or even start deep in a B main. And
Oh,
so,
yes.
um, one of those names, Colin Hibden, first night winner, did not have a great heat race. He finished towards the back of that, and he got mired in back of the B main. And unfortunately, he didn't transfer into to the feature. So it just goes to show you like how much you have to be on your game from one night to the next. Like you could be winner on night one and night two, you don't even make the show. It's crazy, just the competition on this tour. And so, getting to the results here, we get to the stock cars. We had a little unfortunate carnage in the heat race. We had Chris Horness who went for a tumble in the 17H. They went four, almost five wide on the first lap in one of the heat races, and unfortunately, it resulted in contact and Chris taking a tumble four full revolutions. And thankfully, he was okay. Car, not so much. And so, another battle up front between Shelby Williams and Austin Brands, and those two were kind of the main story of the show. Now, the track for the stock cars was mainly around the bottom. They're kind of using the bottom lane and a half to two lanes, and so definitely a race for the bottom and kind of trying to make sure you could kind of gain position, but you could kind of still roll the middle if you had enough momentum. But they exchanged the lead several times throughout that race. Kind of similar to like the legends in McLean County Speedway, where Donovan Weiss and Noah Madler. Austin was better coming out of the turns, and Shelby was more consistent going into the turns and through the center of the corner. And so it was kind of a cat and mouse game from lap to lap on who would kind of prevail. In the end, though, Shelby Williams was able to regain control of that with a late race restart and hold off Austin Brands, the night one winner, for second. And then Cameron Starry from Corpus Christi, Texas, 14th to third. And so a very strong run for the HAS. Kyle Schulp, a local out of Lampman, Saskatchewan, was fourth, and Zach Madrid was fifth. And so that was your top five for your IMCA stock cars. And then they did a track working session. They were able to do out of car intros up in the Estevan Motor Speedway, which is really cool because like the way it's set up, like the fans are like right next to the cars, basically in front of the grandstand. And so like they get into the driver intros. Really cool scene down there. And once again, modifieds went caution free. Another 30 laps straight green to checker. And your front row consisted of local Tyson Turbo in the 10T, the topside tour, and then Tom Berry Jr., former national champion, former tour champion on the outside. And so when you have Tom Berry on the outside pole, it's like, all right, well, good luck to the rest of the field and see how this goes. And so he got the early race lead and basically never looked back from there. Of course, slicing and dicing through lap traffic, you had the second place finisher, Ethan Broxma, that started eighth, drew worst on the redraw, of course. Got up to second and it was like, okay, let's see if he can track him down as he goes through lap traffic. And Tom Berry was just a wizard going through lap traffic. He was splitting cars three wide left and right, and it wasn't slowing him down. He was able to get through lap traffic way quicker than anyone else. And so he cruised on to the feature run up in Estevan. Ethan Broxton was second. Justin O'Brien and Sean Strand put on a great show for third. They battled side by side throughout the latter part of that race. And Cody Lady in the 5L was your top five finisher. And so two straight nights in the IMCA modifieds go clean and green on the tour. Just another example of the caliber of competition. Once you get into the feature, that like there's not going to be many mistakes being had. So definitely got to be on your A game and try to get in that front eight lineup as soon as you can. And then we move on to Estevan. Now, before I get out to Estevan, John, were you able to watch any of the highlights from Estevan or Williston?
I watched a little bit from Estevan from like just the live feed that was out there for a couple of the heat races. Track looked really good. It was really racy for the heat race side of it, but that was about it. Besides that, and then Williston based, I really wasn't able to watch anything with us starting hot and heavy with a workload yesterday.
Okay, so we get into Estevan, and that was the last race I was at before they were at Southwest Speedway tonight, which I haven't seen anything from Southwest Speedway as far as like video wise. Well, obviously, we know the results by this point, and they had a little bit of a issue with the track preparation heading on into the night, and I don't know exactly kind of how it all shaped out. I think with the heat and kind of just like the moisture they've had over the last couple weeks, just kind of didn't kind of come together the way they were hoping. And so they had to do like a little extended track work before the races start. So we had a little bit of a delayed start. And so the track was pretty rough for the heat races. So the drivers kind of went out there and managed what they could, got to intermission, and they reworked it once again. And the track was a lot better. Like I want to give a shout out to the track prep crew for putting in like a good effort to give them a better racing service between heats and B mains and A mains because it's easy to kind of like throw in the towel when you have a lot of people kind of like complaining, kind of like have kind of a rough or sour attitude going in. But I will say the racing on the tour has been stellar, and I think the two features I saw in Wilson are definitely two of the best ones of the week. Very entertaining, very racy, very competitive, 2 to 3 wide racing all throughout the field. When you have that, it's hard to like complain about that. I mean, you want to put on a show for the fans, give drivers an opportunity that they can go out and pass and race one another and put on a great show. And I think that was what the crew at Wilson did during that intermission. So hats off to them for a job well done. And so getting in the stock cars now, there's some interesting action in this feature race, John. So the front row consisted of Brendan Labatt and Shelby Williams, and Shelby Williams got out to the lead, and they kind of had a good run of green flag racing where things kind of like, spread out a little bit. They had a couple of cautions, a couple little incidents to bunch everything up. Get to a late race restart, and that's when things really got interesting because you had Rob Van Meel, last year's tour champion, kind of making his way or started up towards the front as well. He was trying to get on side of Shelby Williams. And the track kind of gravitated from like being top dominant to kind of like the bottom starting to come in a little bit more. And so some drivers were finding that out through the middle of the pack. And Rob, I think, I can't remember who was inside of him, but he tried to go to the bottom, made the pass for the lead. He kind of got it into Shelby a little bit, which caused then Dalton Flory, who was a couple positions back, to take it 3 wide and make the pass for the lead with just a few laps to go. And so then Shelby and Rob started having a little bit of a disagreement up at the front of the field after that for the last couple of laps. And so that allowed Dalton Flory out of Wilson. This is only his only tour race of the year. He got the win from 6th in front of Shelby Williams and Cameron Starry once again with a top 3 run. Shout out to Dan McIntyre, the number 92, 22nd to 4th.
Wow.
Very, very good performance from the 92. He had some trouble in his heat race and started almost tail end Charlie, and he moved up pretty good as well. So big win for Dalton Flory. He had some rough luck in the modified, and so it was nice to see him bounce back in the stock cars up in Williston. And then modifieds, they didn't go clean and green this time, John. I think they only had 1 caution though. So 3 nights so far and 1 caution in the modifieds and another great race. Colin Hibden rebounding from his night number 2 misfortune, started outside pole once again in Wilson outside of Brady Biel, the Boomtown Bullet. And so you could definitely see there was a lot at stake up in the front row. And Colin kind of cruised out to a lead. Lap traffic was the name of the game as they kind of started to navigate that a little bit. And Colin had a pretty good healthy margin over Biela, Cody Laney, Ethan Broxma. But the guy that was slowly making his way to the front was the high side tickler, Kyle Strickler. And now he races, one of his big sponsors is Troy Girolamo, and he's the owns G-Man Transport out of Williston. And so he was definitely racing with some more extra motivation heading into this race. And he was slowly making gains throughout the last 10 laps, passing one car to another. And he got to about 2 laps to go, and he had tracked down Colin Hibden running the top. And then he started to make his move as they were going through lap track through the middle. And they were side-by-side taking the white flag. Strickler threw a slider up in front of Colin, and he was able to clear him. Colin wasn't able to counter by the time they got around to the checkered flag. And so Kyle Strickler got his first Dakota Classic Modified Tour win up in Williston. Hibden hung on for second, and Ethan Broxma, not second this time, but another top 3 finish. And so you could definitely tell who's kind of up in the top as far as points go in the modifieds. And so very excited Kyle Strickler in victory lane. He was very, very pumped up to win in front of the Williston crowd. And so that was your first 3 nights of racing for the mod tour. And of course, that was the last night I took in person. Becca and Jessup were at Southwest Speedway tonight, which just finished before we started recording this. You want to quickly go over the results there, John?
Yeah, no, we can go over those really quick here too. So let's talk about points really going into tonight as well. So
Yep.
points battles were pretty tight, especially for the stock car based before they hit tonight. I'm gonna bring them up here in just a few seconds, just so I don't misspeak on any of the point stuff. But based on the way that the points were looking, especially from your modified perspective, we'll start with them first. Ethan Broxma was your points leader going into tonight, and he had a pretty healthy margin over Tim Ward. Ward was in second, right there behind him, and then you had obviously like Kyle Strickler up there. Justin O'Brien's had a very nice week. He's been up there in the top five the whole entire week for points as well. Now on the stock car side, points battles were very interesting because Shelby Williams took the lead after Williston. So after Williston, he had a 2 point lead over Dan McIntoon. And then basically Starry was right there. Cameron Starry was only a few points back out of Texas, and then Rob Van Mill was in the top four as well as Austin Brands. Now tonight's racing action, I haven't seen anything either. I'll just kind of go through the results here. So the result based stuff for the stock cars is it looked like they definitely it looks like had some attrition tonight. We did see on like Facebook that I think Dan McIntoon destroyed his car tonight, so likely he's done with the tour. Unfortunately, he was right there in the top two for points. But it was Cameron Starry that ended up picking up the feature win tonight. He started eighth and got the win. So congratulations to him. The Cheetah, Rob Van Mill was second. Hunter Domagala, a rookie in this division as well, was third, and then it was Austin Brands. He went from 20th to fourth, and then besides that, yeah, Shelby Williams, your points leader, actually finished seventh tonight. So Shelby actually lost a couple spots in that feature event. So that's going to shake up your points in your stock cars because going into tomorrow night, the championship night of the tour, it's super close now. You actually have Cameron Starry, who is your points leader right now. He has got a 4 point lead over Shelby Williams. Shelby is 4 points back. And in third in points is Rob Van Mill, your defending champion, and he's only 5 points back. So again, each position on the track is a point. So basically, Cameron tomorrow, if he finishes in the top three, he's going to be champion.
Mhm.
However, if he finishes anywhere outside of the top three, he's got a chance to lose that championship. Dan McIntoon was fourth in points. He was 13 back. Unfortunately, he'll probably be done for the tour just based on the wreck tonight. And then Austin Brands is 16 points back in fifth. Now on to your modifieds tonight. Tonight's race was a pretty good one to look like based on the future finishing positions here for a lot of these drivers. And it was Ethan Broxma who ended up picking up the win over Travis Hagan. So the dark horse was second tonight. Tom Berry Jr. was third. He picked up the feature win over at Estevan. He was third. Coney Laney was in fourth, and then Tim Ward was fifth. So those are your top five drivers here tonight for your modifieds. Points for your modifieds. Ethan Broxma has been super consistent this whole entire tour so far. He is the current points leader, and he right now has got a 16 point lead over Tim Ward. So basically, if Broxma finishes in the top 15 tomorrow night in the future event, he's safe. He will be your points champion and tour champion for the year. Tim Ward is second in points, 16 back. Kyle Strickler is 21 points back in third. Justin O'Brien is fourth in points, 22 back, and Eddie Bellick is 23 back. So right now, from about second to fifth, only 7 spots on the track. So that can change a lot between your top basically second through fifth in points. And then Travis Hagan, who's sixth in points, is only 24 back. So right there, that is basically 8 points, 8 positions on the track between your second to sixth in points. So a lot of shakeup could happen within those point standings tomorrow night, especially within each one of your divisions with your modifieds and your stock cars.
Yep.
But
And I
yeah,
mean, we've seen in the past, like, too, it doesn't matter what kind of point lead you have going to last night, because I believe last year wasn't in the stock cars that Trent Greger was in pretty close to Rob Van Mill, and he had some misfortune in the feature race, and that kind of knocked him out of contention too. And so, anything can happen. Like it's racing. Like things happen real fast, but like you said, Ethan Broxton has been very consistent in the modified. Good to see him get the monkey off his back because he's been
yeah.
second, third, and finally got a win. I'm sure that gets old really quick.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think for him to finally break into victory lane was pretty big tonight.
Yep, and Cameron Starry, I mean, outside the night one where he started on pulling a drop back to eighth, he's been passing a lot of cars this week.
Yes, he has. But even if you look at it for, night one, he started tailing in C race too and worked his way into a transfer position based on passing points. So he passed a lot of cars on night one too in his heat race to get himself into transfer.
Yep. And so that's going to be fun to watch that points battle shake out, especially in the stock cars. Definitely a
Yep.
very high caliber field there. And then the modifieds too, because of course you mix all the people that have been following the tour for the entire week. And we talk about Dakota Speedway quite a bit on this show. And there's a lot of regulars at Dakota Speedway that know that track pretty darn well. And so they could also factor in because, sometimes it takes a stacked heat race where you may not transfer right away and you have to come through a B main and have
Yes.
to start deep in the field. And then who knows what can happen.
Yes. Yep. Yep. No, I 100% agree with you, Mason, on that. So,
Yeah.
so
So
yeah,
that
so we'll both be at Mandan tomorrow night.
that's the plan as
Be
of
the
right
plan.
now. We'll be able to join with the Pelkeys, who I'm sure are having a lot of fun, but also exhausted. I know Becca's been really busy. She's had to hand score a couple nights at the track, so it's definitely keeping her busy and making Jessup doing a lot of the legwork and running around the pits, gathering drivers for the redraw. So they're definitely putting their work in for this week.
It's good to see that Becca is putting her math skills to use. I'm very proud of that. I've taught her more of the math skills here in the last couple of years. And then it's also nice to see that Jessup is having to work as well. It's good to see him get up and about and get moving a little bit across the racetracks.
Absolutely, yeah. And want to give a shout out to our other two sponsors, Isaac Hot Sauce Sandro and the IMC Modified made the show the first two nights, in Nodak and Esteban. I think he pulled off at Nodak. I think he was just basically trying to stay out of the way
Yeah.
once he got it
Yep.
lap traffic, and then Esteban looked pretty dang good. And so definitely nice to make it's an accomplishment to make the show in itself and to run competitively like Isaac's been doing to start the tour off. And unfortunately, he's run into a couple misfortunes, but that comes with the tour as well. So I want to give out shout out to Isaac and Brody Karlsrud. Underrated tour so far. I mean, he's put together some of his best runs on the tour. He got a couple of top tens. I didn't see how he did tonight. I have to double check that, but he got a 10th in Esteban and I think a 7th in Williston. Boy, I mean, that's a great boost of confidence for Brody. I mean,
Yeah. Let me look here because I've got him up here tonight too. I think he was top 10 tonight. Yeah, he was eighth. He was
eighth.
eighth tonight.
Yep. So
So,
another solid
yep.
run. So great job, guys. Way to represent the track packer as well. And hopefully it ends on a great note over the Dakota Speedway tomorrow night in Mandan. So we're kind of focused on the tour for this show, but any other racing plans heading into this weekend, John?
Yeah, so I'll be hitting Mandan on Thursday. I'm going to work until I have to go to the track tomorrow night. So I'll end up going out to the track a little bit later on tomorrow night. Friday, I'm going to end up at work most of the day and most of the night. So I won't be doing anything Friday probably. I will have to work a little bit Saturday, but I'll be announcing in Jamestown Saturday night. They do have the Red River Valley Sprint Car Series, so the IMCA Race Saver Sprints are over there on Saturday along with all the regular classes. This will actually be the first time Jamestown is going to be racing since probably the 12th of June because of rainouts. So definitely looking forward to getting back over there and having a good night over in Jamestown. And then we'll see. I might be hitting Underwood on Sunday, depending on how our work schedule goes. So this will be obviously one of our weekends that we will be working as well, but we'll see. Hopefully I can get out and about and go to Underwood on Sunday.
Nice. I kind of have a bit of a similar schedule in one aspect. So obviously Mandan tomorrow on Thursday, as long as I get out of work on time, and I have a 3 hour drive, so that's going to be pushing it.
Hmm.
Friday, I'm looking at possibly going down to the Tri-County Speedway for the second night of their fair races and the championship night for their Mama Better Hoppy Stock Challenge. And so I'm looking at that or I-94 Speedway, but I'm pretty sure I'll be in Wishick on Friday. Also going to be planning to be in Jamestown on Saturday. And then on Sunday, going to head back over to the Cheyenne Speedway to get
Yep.
my first full night of racing, hopefully in, because the first time did not pan out so well. So
Yeah, I know it rained pretty good on you guys the first night, especially for the street stock tour over there too. So that
yeah,
that kind of sucked for sure.
yeah.
But
So that's my
but no,
plan for
that's
this
kind of our
weekend.
plan. Yeah, that's kind of our plan for this weekend too. Hopefully weather is pretty good. I know it's supposed to be pretty warm. But looks like mostly should be good to go hopefully this weekend across the board.
Yep, and so hopefully next week we'll be back to a regular showing, although I might take in some midweek action. We'll see. If things plan out and I get a ride, I might be heading up a special race next week. So stay tuned for that, John.
Ooh, that might be entertaining.
Absolutely. But we'll be back to regular form hopefully in the next week. And thank you as always for checking us out and watching us on the Track Packers podcast. Be sure to like, share, and comment on our Facebook and our YouTube channel. And be sure to follow us on Spotify, Google, and Apple As always, thank you to our sponsors, Hitch Harness, The Real Deal with Breed One, and Isaac Hot Sauce Sandro. Good luck to everyone racing the rest of this weekend. Stay hydrated, stay healthy, and we will see you out there packing the track.